Welcome to the Your Next Move podcast. Today, I am so excited to have a long-time friend and entrepreneur who I love and appreciate and also just love his vibe. So we have a treat today with Lenny Williams. And fun fact, if you go back into the archives on my YouTube, you can see him in like 2017, 2018, swag surfing at the Empowerment Social.
That's true.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
I didn't think you was going to bring that up.
I had to bring it up. I had to.
Right.
I like to talk about where I meet everybody. And I think you and I met when we were speaking on a panel.
Yes.
At an event in New Jersey. It was like at a basement event in this bar speaking. And I remember I saw Lenny. I was like, oh, like this guy has a vibe, like a very powerful, like knows his shit, doesn't take any shit type of vibe. And I was like, no, he needs to come around. So he was at the Empowerment Social, and we actually reconnected a few weeks ago after not seeing him in years, pandemic plus life. And now he's here on the Your Next Move podcast. So I introduced you my way, but I want you to give your receipts. Let the people know who you are.
Yeah. So Kim, thank you.
Anytime.
I appreciate you. I listen to your podcast. You know, I'm not one of those people that pull up, don't listen.
And don't listen and you did homework.
You know, fake it. Like, yeah, I didn't listen. You know, I enjoy what you're doing. I love what you're doing. You know, I met you working higher ed. I watched you go from higher ed to corporate now into the space of running your own business. And I think that's impressive.
Thank you.
So I wanted to tell you that before I talk about myself. I'm not here to just talk about myself.
Give me some flowers. I don't mind it.
So for me, I am a professor, right? That's what I love to do. I'm an educator at heart. I've been teaching now for 9 years. Okay. I've been in the classroom all throughout New Jersey. I also taught in China as well. The subject I teach is business management and marketing. I've been able to help develop a course in college. I'm also known for wearing sneakers to work, kicks to work, kicks to class. My business partner, which I'll say my business is in a minute, we wrote a book called We Wear Kicks to Work, and it's about being authentic. So not only am I an educator, but I'm an authentic educator. And lastly, I'm a businessman. Like I started hustling and doing side hustles when I was like 16, 17. I've been doing it for almost 20 years. So if you do the math, you know my age, that's fine. And my business partner and I started this business, Trill or Not Trill. So Trill or Not Trill is my child, as I would say. We do leadership development for higher education primarily, but also in the corporate space. We worked with over 100 colleges. We have also worked with companies like JP Morgan, BuzzFeed, Facebook, and lastly, Google. So we've been able to be in that space of creating conferences, workshops, helping students get jobs, career readiness. And then lastly, I stepped into the tech space during COVID. So I stepped into the tech space, helped develop learning platforms for the Georgia Aquarium, partnered with another company, and created the first Afro-Latina AI robot for social good. So yeah, I do a lot. I hustle a lot. It's part of my background, part of how I grew up. And yeah, that's pretty much me. And I think I live a life of just being authentic and being who I am every single day, no matter what the world tells you to be.
I love that. We're going to talk a lot about authenticity today, but I want to circle back to Trill or Not Trill. We have a very diverse audience here, so can you break it down? Where's the name come from? What does it mean? Let us know.
Trill, Not Trill. So Trill is a hip-hop word for truth and real put together. If you add a little Houston Southern twang, it gives you trill. If you put true and real together, trill. It was coined by Pimp C and Bun B, which is UGK. Shout out to UGK. And how it kind of started, because I think it's important to understand how it started. So my business partner is a writer. I'm a businessman. So he decided to go on Facebook and write posts and take things such as pop culture and say, is this trill or not trill? Okay. And people on Facebook loved it. And he said, if I started a blog, would you read it? And of course, he started a blog and nobody read it, right?
And nobody read it?
Now it goes like, yeah, if I start a taco company tomorrow, would you buy it? Yeah, I got you.
And then nobody buys
a taco. Not even your mom. But, so me and Jeff are, we're friends. And he started writing a lot more on the blog. He stayed consistent. And one of his blogs got picked up by the local radio station, which is a nationally known radio station, was Hot 97. And it took off. When it took off, we had a meeting already prior. I said, listen, I think that we should make this a business. I don't think you should just be writing for free. I don't think you should be wasting your time. Yeah. Of course, the businessman in me. I'm like, I think that you should make this a business, and I'm willing to be your partner if you make me a better writer, right? And he said, I will. I got you. That's easy. I'll help you be a better writer.
Wow.
Help me be a better businessman. And that's how we took Trill or Not Trill from just being a Facebook post into a company.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I don't even think I knew what trill really meant.
So
I appreciate
Kim,
the breakdown.
I'm judging. I'm not going to front.
I know you're judging. I'm judging me, and I probably shouldn't have said that on camera.
No.
I should have lied, but we're going to take it. We're going to take it. Because I think that leads us right to being authentic.
I am shocked.
I'm a small town girl from Connecticut. So I didn't hear Purple Rain until college. I probably shouldn't have said that either.
Next question. I think
next question.
That works, right?
Got it. We're talking about being authentic. I authentically don't know some of those terms.
I'm trying to save you out here.
It's okay. It's okay. This is a vulnerable season for me. I'm telling my truth, and that is my truth.
No, I got you.
So one of the things that I love about like how you present yourself, it is wildly authentic.
Thank you.
And I think that you haven't been bit by, influenced by a corporate bug, a higher ed bug. You seem like authentically yourself no matter what room you're in. And it's such a hot topic. I think when everybody's talking about like bring your full self to work, like, and sometimes well, you know, I'm not going to say my view first. I'll say it after. What are your thoughts on authenticity in the workplace? I
think authenticity is a tricky subject because it became a coined term. For me, I feel like I'm authentic because of my prior experience, and I think it's important I kind of talk about it. I started working in corporate really early, so I got a job, really excited, first generation student, got this corporate job, making all of this money, and I got in, and I'll never forget what I seen like the 4th month working there. So this is a guy named Charlie. So Charlie was my guy, right? So Charlie, I'm calling him out because he's a great guy. So Charlie was somebody that worked at the company for 42 years. Yikes. Right? You don't see that anymore. Right? No. So he worked there for 42 years, and he was the nicest guy. I'm not going to say the name of the company because everybody else was mean. But Charlie was the nicest guy. Okay. Right? Charlie was a very nice guy. He believed in diversity in a company that didn't believe in diversity. He did everything you can think of. He was the first one there, the last one to leave. Charlie decides to retire. When he retires, they gave him a ice cream cake and a notepad and a pen. It was like, thank you for your service. After 42 years? After 42 years. Right? And I realized that Charlie used to always tell me certain things like, hey, you have to be this way when you're at work. You have to say these type of things when you're at work. You have to use this term at work. You know, be careful when you're talking to this person and be careful when you're doing this. And I looked at it, I said, Charlie was so loyal to this company for 42 years, and all they gave him was an ice cream cake. Now, the kicker was Charlie did not eat ice cream cake also, right? Got it. Which was crazy to me. And I remember that. And I grew up in a household of blue-collar workers, and people in my house was like, listen, you have to be yourself. And I grew up with people that grew up in the South that went through slavery. So being authentic was all I knew. Now, what I feel like in the workplace was tricky about that is, unfortunately, we are put into these boxes of what success looks like, right? And I think a lot of people don't really know what they want, right? So a lot of people go after this thing called success, and they just chase after what other people are successful at, and then they lose who they are. So I don't think they do it on purpose. I just think that they get caught up between algorithms and social media and societal pressures that you forget who you are. And once you forget who you are, now you're like, I don't even know how to be authentic in a workspace. I'm just going to be what the company's telling me to be. And the last thing I'll say about that, for those of you that may struggle with that, is that if you don't create your narrative, somebody else will create it for you. Right? So if you don't create the narrative or the book or the story that you want to create, please believe the company will create it for you, because they need you to work there, and they need the wheels on the bus for the company to go round and round for everything to be able to be successful for the company. So I say all that to say, like, authenticity is a tough word because everybody's all excited about it. It's cute. It sounds cute, rolls off the tongue, all sexy, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of people don't know who they are. And that's the biggest part of it. If you don't know who you are, people are creating this narrative for you, and now you're not authentic. So you have to be mindful of that. So you really took it to a point of, like, in order to be authentic, you have to understand who you are first. I'm sorry, I'm really deep about that topic. No, I appreciate it. It bothers me. So when I think about being authentic in the workplace, I always say that I think people have unrealistic expectations of what authenticity can look like. Because I think there's one side of it is, like, if you're, let's say, working in big finance. Right. I've worked in big finance companies before. There is a culture, there is a way that people do things generally in big finance. Right. And most of the time, until you're in a position of power and influence, you kind of have to go the way the people go. You can veer off a little bit, right, but it's hard to really show up and just come out. If everybody's wearing blue, black, and gray suits every day and you coming out in checkers, super tailored, and a top hat,
because that's your authentic self. It's like okay, but what there could potentially be consequences,
Right?
And it's, are you able to be yourself, your most authentic self, in environments where it's the actual polar opposite? How do you feel about code switching in that sense? I think that's where a lot of the code switching comes in.
Right.
So do you feel like it's possible?
Yes. So I think the work matters more than anything else, right? So I'm not telling you to go out there and start wearing sneakers to work. Like, I'm not telling you to pull up and the culture is wearing sneakers. The culture was not wearing sneakers in my school, right? The culture was not wearing sneakers in a meeting with the president. But when you do the work, when the work and the results are there, there's nothing else they can really see. Now, if they're still picking with you outside of the work, then you don't belong in that space, right? And I know that I say that kind of just so easily, but that's just how I am. I don't believe anybody belongs in a space where you can't be yourself, right? But what I'm saying to you is that you come in, maybe you do wear the blue and gray suits when you come in, and you slowly make the change. Maybe you wear a different type of tie, or you wear a lapel, or you wear your hair just a little different, but at the same time, you're still consistently doing the work. You can't be late and not doing the work and being disrespectful and then being like, I'm wearing my sneakers and you don't know who I am. I'm regular from the, like, no, you can't do that. Like, you have to gradually, make everybody comfortable, because you are going to be a little different in those spaces a lot of times. But a lot of these companies now, with the Crown Act and other laws, are starting to not be as bad as they were when I first got there.
Yeah.
But it's still there. But if you're doing the work will always trump everything else that anybody can say about you, because the work and the results is what you're there for at the end of the day. We're not there to my parents always say, you're not there to really make friends and new family. Don't get all excited about that. Like, this is not your best friend. At the end of the day, they want to see you be the first one in, the last one out, work your hardest, prove that you're the best, because nobody can take that away from you.
I love that so much. So, because you talked about like how excellence could open doors. That's something I tell people all the time, is that exceptions are made for greatness, for excellence. Relationships can magnify a lot of things. But I think in the workplace, when we talk about wanting more liberties, we want to be more authentic, we want the better projects, we want whatever it is, the baseline is always like mastery of your craft and excellence, because that's where you get to do what you want to do. Because when people trust who you are, what you do. Even with my team, like, I think as I hire in my own company, I talk a lot about how, like, once I know you've got it, I'm not going to sweat you. Go forth and soar.
Right.
But the baseline is the excellence.
Yeah, and if I got one more thing, I think what's important too is, especially for younger professionals, you're not going to be Charlie. You're not going to be there for 42 years, 9 times out of 10, right? You never in this field, a lot of people move around. So just because somebody's not your direct supervisor here, they could be watching your excellence at the company here, move on to the next space, and bring you along. I think a lot of people forget that. They get so worked up, especially in this microwave of success society that we live in, that they believe that because they're not getting a promotion right now, or they're not getting a role right now, it's failure.
Yep.
No, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm getting business deals from people that watched me work 10 years ago, right? I forgot all about them, in that space of us working together, but they never forgot about me. And the moment they see that I kept doing the work and I was consistent, they called out to me. And I think that's what's most important, that you don't get into this defeatish attitude of like, I can't, there's nothing working out here, but you never know who else is watching you or which one of your coworkers is going to move on and bring you alongside them. So I think that's important too, when you're doing the work and when you feel like you may be stuck in a certain space.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned talking about college students. I think that's where I wanted to move to next, talking about like our Gen Z folks.
Shout out to Gen Z.
Yes, shout out to Gen Z. They've been tearing it up in the workforce.
Sure have.
So a few questions. The first one I have is, what do you feel is crucial for these young professionals to understand about this transition from college to the workplace?
I think first and foremost, what I'm noticing a lot of is the lack of understanding of relationships, right? And cultivating relationships. We live in a society where it's a double like or a swipe, and you can build a relationship. And it kind of went into society the same way. Like, you think that the first time you meet somebody or the first time you meet a power player, if they don't say yes right then and there, then it's over, right? That's something I notice a lot with my Gen Z individuals, and I want you to know that there's a long game to this, right? And I don't like to always bring up the cliche Nipsey line, but it's a marathon, right? And I just want to just give you that advice that's really true. Whether you're Gen Z, millennial, baby boomer, or whoever, it's not going to just happen overnight. And I think that's the issue that a lot of Gen Z have. And I'm afraid that I understand that you don't want to work somewhere for 42 years, but I don't need you to jump to every single company because after a while, you're going to burn too many bridges. So I think the first part is understanding that the relationship takes time and needs to be cultivated. The second part is making sure you're not burning bridges, right? So I always tell my Gen Z folks, treat everyone like the CEO, whether it's the housekeeper, the person that makes the omelet in the cafeteria, the admin, like treat everyone like they are the CEO because you never know where that relationship can go. And I think the third piece is one something I see a lot with Gen Z is ghosting, right? Do not ghost people. I don't know what that is. I don't know. It's a weird flex. I don't know if it's something that you want to use for later in context to be like, yeah, I ghosted them. And yeah, they thought they had me, but I am bigger than that. My brand doesn't align. I hear you, but
I don't. I don't.
Well, I hear you out of respect, right? What you're saying. I respect everybody, as my mom would say. But I just need you to understand, like, how do you make sure that you're not burning? And again, it goes back to that second point of how you're not burning that bridge, but just don't ghost, right? Just be honest. Don't take every single conversation. Don't take every single job. Don't take every single opportunity. Pace yourself, right? Because that ghosting is nothing worse than when somebody ghosts you because people do not forget that.
100%. We could have a whole conversation on ghosting.
Yeah, I don't want. I told you, I'm trying to be relaxed.
No, we don't want to be relaxed. We're not going to relax today. When we think about ghosting, I think I'm shocked that people do it outside of the workplace. And I feel like in the workplace, I feel like should have a greater level of respect.
Right.
I think the thing that I think Gen Z's, my question for you next, is about what the workplace can do for Gen Z. And I think as like a hiring leader, as a manager, I think people are they're seeing the opposite side, right? They're seeing that sometimes Gen Z doesn't have grit.
Yep.
Like grit to have the conversation, grit to stick through something, grit to build the relationship. It's, okay, I see this. I want this. Oh, I can't have it. So then I'm gone.
Right.
And employers are like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? How can I retain Gen Z talent if I see these flags?
Right.
Because this is our next generation of leaders. So how are you advising companies on that?
Empowerment. So there's something I wrote about in my book. Number one, it's called Generational Mentor, right? So when you bring on your junior staff, as they would say, right? Or staff that just graduated from college, Gen Z, you want them to be your mentor just as bad as they want to be your mentor, right? So it's making sure that you're making the workplace and some of the language you're using is working for your staff. And it's something as small as that. And we talk about that in a higher ed space, but it also works in a corporate space of finding those generational mentors to help you. Because every Gen Z is a little different, right? Gen Zs are different across regions. I work with all of them. So it depends on where you are. Yeah. So it's important for those supervisors and more. Yeah, I want you to have those junior rotational programs and, the ERG groups and more for the young talent. But I want you to make sure that you give them a voice to provide to the company as well. That's the thing about Gen Z. They just want to have a space where they can have a voice, and they want to have a space where they don't feel like they're tied down. Yeah. Now, for that tied down portion of it, I think it's important for us to figure out what do they enjoy past just their career. Gen Z are driven by things that are happening in society now. Gen Z are driven by current events more than ever. I grew up, and I'm sure you grew up in an era where politics was off limits at work.
Always.
Well, sorry to say, Gen Z is driven by politics these days, right? And we have to figure out in the most professional way and positive way of implementing those voices and making sure that we're cultivating those relationships based on those items, right? Even the way we do our corporate outings, are we working with our staff? I'll give you an example. I wasn't going to give an example, but I have a mentee who works at a large company. I won't say what company he works for, and it's a really large company. He was going to quit the company, and I told him I'm going to fire myself as his mentor if he quits this company. Why? This is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard in my life, because he said he wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? And I'm okay with that, but he was not going to make anything close. But I also told him it would be strategically the wrong thing to do. If he worked at a company, it would help his business even more, right? And he didn't realize that. Yeah. Now, moving fast forward, this large company is backing his entrepreneurial idea, and he works for the company. So sometimes we have to think about, especially these tech companies, they really have a strong understanding of Gen Z and will say, hey, you can have your nonprofit. Hey, you can have your company. As long as you're doing your work here, as long as it's not on our resources and our time, you can get it done. And I think that's important for companies to understand. I know that every company can't do that, but for many companies, you can. You're not doing brain surgery. Like, you can give your employees time to do these type of things. So I think it's important for us to look at what Gen Z, what really motivates them, and then how we can pour into that and make sure that they're pouring into us as they are our employees.
One of the biggest things I heard you say, paraphrasing really, is that we need to listen.
Yep.
Because I think that many times Gen Z get frustrated when they feel unheard, unseen, undervalued, any under with an adjective at the end.
They just want to talk.
Yes. And they want to know that even if we're not going to change the decision in their favor, that we're listening. I think back to, so I worked in diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging in big finance, Fortune 100 company. And around the time that George Floyd was murdered, we had a lot of roundtables.
Right.
And a lot of the Gen Z who were in internships or coming in for the first time, they had no idea what the company had been doing, what they weren't doing.
Right.
All they wanted to do was be heard. And
Right.
sometimes it can come off as like, you're not. But there was a lot of education that had to happen. And I think a lot of leaders didn't want to explain that. They're like, who is this intern coming in here talking about what we haven't done when they've been here 3 weeks?
Right.
And we've been doing this for how many months, how many years? It was really just about having a dialogue and allowing that to happen on a continuous basis. 'Cause I think sometimes we may do it one time. We may do one opportunity where Gen Z can talk, but it's like, how can we do this quarterly, monthly,
Right.
in each one-on-one to let them be heard and be seen?
And I think it's also important, just like I said, to empower them, right? So some of them already are trained enough because of college, because of their positions, to talk about certain topics, right? And then when you give them that, it's something that you say, hey, you put on your resume, and it's something we're trying to help you in your career. It's not about us putting you in this company jail of staying with us for the rest of your career. And I think a lot of people enjoy that and respect that.
Agreed. So let's transition a little bit to the mid-career professionals.
Okay.
So we're talking about like our millennials, right? Like I think where you and I are. What do you feel like is the biggest piece of leadership development that our generation is missing right now?
Biggest piece of leadership development our generation is missing, it's going to sound so basic to me, is networking. You know, people say they network and people say they're networking. They're not.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest piece. And again, it kind of goes back to networking. I would say networking without titles, right?
Can you explain
Networking from a human to human ideology. That's what I always call it. So treating people as humans first. I don't walk in and ask people what their title is. I don't walk into any networking event and just give me your 30-second pitch. I feel like we are so inclined now to have a brand. We have to be a brand. That now I feel like I walk around, I'm talking to commercials all day at a networking event. And what's going to make you different if everybody has a commercial? To me, just being a human. Like, hey, what are you drinking? Oh, you're drinking tequila. I like tequila. What's tequila? And it's something about that human interaction that feels real. It feels like one of your friends down the street or somebody you met in the hallway, than just feeling like everything is a job interview. I think that's a lot of things that kind of bothers me. It gets to the point, I notice that people don't even ask how individuals are doing. I know millennials think we're young, but some of us have had health issues.
Yeah.
Some of us have had home issues, partner issues. And we just automatically jumping in like, yo, so what are you going to do next? And again, I'm not going to say any names, but I had a conversation with somebody recently and I realized that millennials is kind of sad. Like, if you're not doing something, there's a problem. They were like, what's new with you? And I was like, man, I haven't done nothing in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And they were like, so you didn't do anything? And I'm like, man, you really have to be doing something. And I feel like that's what happens in these networking events. If you're not doing a project, or if you don't have a side hustle, or if you don't have an LLC, or if you don't have stocks, if you don't have investments, it's like, oh, I can't talk to you. Never mind. Let's move on to next. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be that human interaction, that human to human interaction that should happen. I think that now people are walking around at networking events. It's almost like an algorithm. It's like, no, you don't fit my algorithm. Never mind.
Yeah.
It should be, basic. Like, where you from? What's your background? Because a lot of that can help you later on. It might not work right now, but it might help you later on. But it's also just good to just meet humans on a human basis. And I think that's where we mess up. I think we just walk around like businesses. And I get it, but I don't think that it's healthy for us all.
So where do you go to build your network? Or what do you do?
So for me, I'm a little different, right? So
break it down for us.
All right. So my grandmother, I always got to break this down. So my grandmother had 18 brothers and sisters.
Ooh.
My great-grandfather had 27 brothers and sisters, 9 with one. His dad had 9 with one person and an 18 with another, something like that. A lot of children.
A lot of babies.
people have like 6, 7, 8, 9 kids on average. So my family on my father's side had family reunions, and they had parties, and they had events. And I would have to go to Georgia in the van.
Always in Georgia.
Right, always in Georgia. In the van, 15 hours, sometimes 16 hours.
Yep.
And then sometimes the family is all spread out. So there was cousins in New Jersey, there was aunts in New Jersey. It was a lot. It was just a lot going on. So we had to follow each other. That's the worst. You got to follow each other down. Somebody got to go to the bathroom, so the whole
everybody got to pull over.
The reason why I bring this up is because I was in a space of a lot of people. So we had to meet each other.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, where do you work? What do you do? And I always share this because it was like sectors of people, right? So you had the people that kind of couldn't stay out of trouble with the cousins, right?
Got it. Yeah.
Then you had the cousins that were like super successful. Mm-hmm. You could tell by the way they drive. Some of them were like senators. Some of them were congresswomen, and they used to talk to each other. Then you had the blue collar family. Mm-hmm. Then you had like the big cousins. Like, wait, where'd they play at? They were Division I. This one played in the NFL. And you just network. You just fit in, and you were pressured to talk to people. I don't have a set place to network. I think networking is 24/7, right? Mm-hmm. So it's from going to have a bite to eat at the bar, and you're talking to the bartender. I think that conversation is important. I think that conversation is just as important at the gym. I play in the basketball league. That conversation is just important. I think that when you make networking a job is when it becomes whack. I think that's when it becomes unstable, and that's when you don't like it and it feels forced. If you live your life of just saying hi to people and speaking to people, and when people make eye contact, just saying hello, holding the door, it will change your life. So I'm a little different. I always had a network. I was very afraid that people could be my cousin, especially in the dating world. So I was out here like...
Everybody could be a cousin. Who's your mom?
Georgia?
Who's your dad?
You from
Who's your uncle?
Screven County?
Your auntie?
Whoa, Screven County. Nah, no. We cousins. Automatically. We cousins. So I just treat networking just a little different. Like tonight, I'm going somewhere after this, right? By myself, eat by myself. I always go in there with the mindset of it could be a millionaire sitting next to me. And if that's the case, I'm going to say hello to that person, and let's see what happens. If we don't talk, we don't talk. If we do talk, then let's just make it natural.
So obviously your network is expansive. Like we've talked about it before. It's massive. Lenny knows everybody who knows everybody who knows everybody.
I couldn't even park the car. I seen somebody I know.
See, exactly.
Like,
met someone in my building. Like, so how do you keep up these relationships though? When you're someone who's essentially a master networker?
I just do a really good job of following certain people, congratulating certain people. I got to credit my mom. I do a really good job of making people feel a certain way one time that no matter what, it feels like we just left off on the last conversation.
Got it.
And I'm gonna give my mom credit for that. I don't know I don't know if she taught me that. I don't know if it was watching her. Everybody loves my mom. If you met my mom once, people ask about my mom. Hey, how's your mom? How's your mom? Like, hey, you only met her once. You only talked to her for 2 minutes. Like, nah, I really love your mom, man. There's something about her. I got that same type of energy from her.
Okay.
If somebody's like, hey, I want to go to Atlanta, and I could reach out to somebody in Atlanta right now, and they're like, man, they really took care of me. When's the last time you talked to them? I'm like, honestly, I haven't talked to Kyle in like 5 years. I just sent them a quick text and was like, listen, my friend is coming down. Let's make it happen. So I think it's about how you make people feel, right? I know that's a old quote, and I know that runs around, but it's really true. It's just how you make people feel, because there's so many bad people out here. You don't realize that unless you're on the side of being a good person, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad people out here, and how you set yourself apart is just talking to people. When you walk in a room, I'm trying to know everybody. Where you from, where you live, who you are. I'm going to make a joke. Whatever I can do to make sure I left a mark in the room is what I want to do. And I think that's what really helps me. Second, I am extremely good at, and I don't like to say but I have to say, I'm going to be honest, I'm extremely good at plugging people at the right opportunity, right? So if I have really good memory, thank God. I hope I don't ever hit my head. I hope I'll never get sick. I have amazing memory to the point, it's photographic, to the point I can tell you almost like what colors you had on when I met you.
Really?
And I think that's what makes me an effective speaker. That's what helps me being a professor. But I say all that to say, when I look at individuals, I always ask what's up with you? Like, what are you doing? And once we get to that point, and they're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this, that, and the third, and I'm like, all right, cool. I will remember that. So the next time I'm with somebody, this is the problem with millennials too. Sorry. Instead of saying I can do it, I'll say Kimberly can do it. right?
Got
We had
it.
that conversation a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I already got something in my head already. Like when I'm doing that, when I'm like, hey, so what are you doing exactly? What does your brand do? That means Lenny is calculating something.
Yeah.
Where he's like, all right, well, Kimberly can talk to Nicole and Callie because Nicole and Callie needs Kimberly. That's something that millennials don't do a good job of because we all think we can do it all. Like, oh, I can do D&I. Oh, Lenny spoke to 1,000 schools. I can speak to 1,000 schools. No, just plug me in, build that relationship because now we can continue to help each other.
Yeah.
And that's what I think really helps me.
I love that. I feel like millennials, there's a little bit of a sense of, it's always like a race of like who can do it the best, the fastest, and not thinking about how we can grow together, do it together, see someone shine in one area and then someone else can shine over here, and it's all okay. You took me in a different direction.
My bad.
No. I don't mind it. I have a handful of questions.
Okay.
So taking it back to leadership development a little bit, I think we've talked a lot about like the onus of like making sure you get what you need, finding the relationships that you need, cultivating these relationships. But the reality is we know that some people just don't know how to do this.
Right.
Do you feel that it's the responsibility of the individual to upskill themselves, or do we need to put some of the onus on the company to upskill their employees to rise in the workplace?
Well, both, right? So let me give you something about for ourselves. Sometimes we don't do a good job of advocating for ourselves, right? So I think it's important as individuals to find a spokesperson, right? To find somebody in your crew, in your group, that's your cheerleader, right? Everybody should have one, right? And then you should also be a cheerleader. Don't be corny. Don't be out here like, oh, I got a cheerleader. I'm an introvert. I'm scared. No, don't do that. Find a way to be a cheerleader. I'm not saying you got to be vocal to be a cheerleader, but find a way to be a cheerleader amongst your group, or find a cheerleader amongst your group for yourself, and then also be a cheerleader amongst your group for somebody within the group. So I think that's important too, that we find a cheerleader or a champion. Now, it doesn't have to be in your group. It can also be at the corporation.
Yeah.
It's also good to find somebody that has been at the corporation that can champion you as well, right? Because there's a funny thing about corporation, and there's a funny thing, I'm going to go deep here, about being a person of color in corporations. Sometimes they try to split us up, right? So sometimes you got to figure out who's going to be an ally amongst those that like to split people up, right? And then who's going to be a champion that looks like you. Yeah. So you need to have an ally that don't look like you, that's going to champion you.
Always.
That has an ear to the room that you supposedly are in, but you're not really in. And then you need somebody that has been there that looks like you to champion you as well, right? It's always good to have people speak about you, then you have to speak about yourself. Now, for companies, I'm going to tell you this right now. You can be as gatekeeping as, not paying attention, or I didn't know this was happening. I grew up in, this particular town, and I never really knew that happened in history. That really happened to your people in your history. I really didn't know, but I went to one of the top schools in the world, but I didn't know. I didn't take that class, right? We're not going to fall for that.
Yeah.
Right. Between technology, between the way Gen Z is, retention is real.
Yeah.
Right. I read an article one time, and I'm not sure the date. I'm probably totally off base, but let's just say it's like 2060 or 2050, that a place like Amazon is going to run out of workers, right? Legit are going to run out of workers because everybody's working there, right? And the turnover is high. So the turnover is high, and what happens now? This is not 1996 where a phone call was every week. Somebody goes on social media, they can see it. Somebody writes in their stories, they can see it. Somebody can text. There's a group chat. There's a WhatsApp. There's so much out there where communication is going to get out there, and it's going to be a hard time hiring people. So to me, companies need to hold themselves accountable, or it's going to be really hard for them to retain and keep employees, which we're starting to see, right? And it's only going to get worse if you're not looking at ways to help your employees.
100%.
Period.
I think when I was in DE&I think a lot of times we talk so much about recruitment. It's always like, how can we get women and people of color, period. But it's like, okay, so now once we get them, what is the pipeline for leadership? How are we developing them, retaining them, promoting them, educating them, empowering them? It's not just recruitment. So that's a really great point.
I think that we need to stop putting the onus on colleges. I wanted to go there, but I'm going to go. I wasn't going to go there, but I'm going to go there.
Go ahead.
All right, so I think that higher ed is always to blame. And I do think that there's some issues with higher ed, and I think there's some great things about higher ed. But I also believe that corporations are not doing a good job, or I'm not seeing a good enough job of them partnering with higher ed within the curriculum, within recruitment, right? It's just go to the Career Center. A lot of these colleges have 15,000 students, and only 4 people working in the career center,
Yep.
right? So companies need to look at how can they revamp, sponsor, get involved with certain schools and career centers. You know, people love sports. Oh, Big 12 and Big East. So why can't companies say, you know what, we're going to work with every Big East school to deliver a finance program powered by us. This is how we're going to recruit our students, right? It should be, that's something that is not done enough. People doing it. Zoom has done it in pockets. They did something with a school, Harris Stowe in Missouri, and there's others. Bank of America did it with New Jersey University and a few others, but I need it to be more than just giving out money and saying we're doing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, I need you to actually be there saying that this is where we're going to create our pipeline.
100%. It's more than just showing up to the career fair.
Absolutely.
That's what I tell everyone about. When you talk about diversity recruiting, people think it's like, all right, well, I signed up on the job board. I went to the career fair. I went to National Black MBA.
Right.
Whatever the conference is, like, why aren't I getting people? It's like, how can you actually build a relationship that's deeper
Right.
versus just like showing up and leaving? So before we leave today.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're about to be done.
Man, that was great.
Oh, yay. I love that. Come on. Review on a podcast episode.
I'm not here to lie.
So, I just want to thank you. I think leadership development, I love talking to people who are in like the field with me. It's very selfless. And I know for me, I am motivated by making sure that women and people of color know how to navigate the world of work with ease.
Absolutely.
I've made mistakes on my own. I'm sure you've made some of your own mistakes. And it's like, dang, I wish I had a mentor to pull my tails, or I wish I knew not to do that, because it would catapult us forward.
Right.
So 2 questions for you. The first one is, what do you do to continue to develop yourself?
Stay around young people.
Okay.
Most importantly, I stay around young people to keep the energy. There's more than one, but that's number one, first and foremost. One of the reasons why I stay in the classroom, because I feel like I have my ear to the Generation Z streets, as I call it.
You do.
Right? And I know all the songs, I know all the shows, I know all the movies, all the sneakers, all the clothes. I'm on. Like, I'm always on. I know. That doesn't mean I'm not trying to age and get older.
Yeah.
It just means that that's the next generation, and that's what I'm training. So I like to stay around them. I'm not going to preach generational mentor and not have a generational mentor. I think the second is, I'm going to say it. I'm tired of people saying that they don't read, or we don't read, or I don't read books, and I don't know where that came from, or who decided to start saying this in popular culture, but I read a lot. I think reading is super important, and I don't think you have to read just your subject matter to stay excited, or stay active, or stay educated within your field, right? I think it's important to read all types of things. So that's the second piece. And I think the third is education. I never stop learning, and I never stop learning from others. And for me, it doesn't have to be traditional education. I learn from anybody. So I have always been very curious. I was always the curious kid that asked a lot of questions. I just told somebody recently, I was the kid that would take the old lady's groceries upstairs just so I can get life lessons. So it was a trick. Like, I'll like, hey, how you doing? You need help with your groceries? And I walk their groceries upstairs.
I'm picturing little Lenny right now.
And I would talk to them for like an hour about life.
Really?
Like, how did you buy this house? When you got married, how did you know you wanted to get married? It was crazy. Like,
really?
If a kid did that to me, I wouldn't even answer all those questions. But I was asking whatever. It was like, how do you feel now? You've
literally been networking your whole life. Just
I'm like,
conversation.
You're a widow. Like, what is that? What is that like? My grandmother was like that. I always have like relatable things, so they didn't feel bad. Like, my grandma's a widow, so how does that work? In the summer, I would stay with my teacher. So I had like an elementary school around the corner. If my teacher car was there, I would talk to the principal and ask the principal, can I come and help the teachers? And again, I would ask, how did you become a teacher? What school did you go to?
Wow.
So I don't think education has to be in a traditional form. It's okay to ask your friends about what they do, and ask people about what they do to learn as well. Like, my boys in HVAC, I ask them all these questions about HVAC now. I don't have nothing to do with HVAC, but I don't know if that's ever going to serve a purpose for me. But it's never a wrong time to be too educated. And I think that's the 3 things that make me who I am.
Last but not least.
All right.
What is your next move?
My next move, so I'm creating a platform called Pop-Up University.
Okay.
It's for Black and Latinx students to gain career knowledge, career pipelines for careers to other companies. And additionally, they'll be able to watch leadership development 24/7.
Ooh, okay.
Career readiness, financial literacy. They can talk to other students across the country. There'll be internship opportunities. And it's just for me to help the employment gap for Black and Latinx students. You know, as somebody that identifies himself as a Black American, I think that was a super important project for me. And that's it. I have another book coming out. I won't say the name of the book just yet.
Okay.
I won't say the name
I
of the
didn't
book.
know that. When's it
Yeah,
dropping?
I'm done. I'm hoping in like November. You know, I don't know where. You know, a couple weeks. I'm hoping.
A couple weeks. Okay.
We'll see, but it'll definitely be out by 2023 for sure.
Okay.
It's something I've been working on for 4 years. It's really about my life, but it's just talking. I'll just say it in the book. It's called "Kick Your Ego to the Side."
Okay.
And it's just talking about like life and case studies and things that I've been through. And I've always been writing quotes on social media forever. And I have over like 200 quotes in the book as well that I wrote myself. Mm-hmm. You know, I was going through certain things in life. So that's my book. And then we're writing a third book, my business partner and I, which I can't say the name of. So yeah, we got that coming up as well. And then we have a bunch of schools we're training, companies, a bunch of ERGs that want to reach out to us to help them become more culturally relevant. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm trying to do more podcasts. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to be on camera more.
Okay.
I've been behind the scenes. I'm not afraid of the camera.
All right.
But, you know.
You hear that, y'all? If you got a podcast, Lenny's open and available.
I'm open to host a podcast, too.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that too loud.
Yes.
But I'm down. And that's pretty much it. So thank you.
You're very welcome. So let the people know. Where can we find you? Where can we follow you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, professor.williams. You can also find me. Our company website is trillornottrill.com. You can find Trill or Not Trill anywhere, all platforms. Professor.williams on all platforms for the most part. That's pretty much it. If you're a sneakerhead, I'm a sneakerhead. Holla at me. I'm 200 sneakers deep.
Oh.
And yeah, just that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much for coming, Lenny.
You got it. Thank you, Kimberly.
No time. No problem. So with that, y'all, may your next move be your very best move.